So apparently, last week, the Bengals were actually interested in trying to go after Russell Wilson. It wasn't just a, hey, we're putting out, this, I guess, chatter or narrative that they should go after him, or we're giving our opinions as, sports fans here. This, according to Mike Florio, last week there was some stray chatter of Wilson to the Bengals for a fifth-round pick. Right? So that's obviously stray chatter from the fans, right? So obviously everyone has talked about it, okay? I don't think it's a stray chatter. I think it's more of a open conversation. And while a deal for Wilson or Winston is possible, the current dynamic could be that neither side wants to make the first move. So that's interesting. So they're interested in going for Russell Wilson, but they don't want to make the first move. So my assumption there, when you're in business, whoever makes the first move sets the principle of how much something's going to cost. If I come to you with a watch, right, and say, okay, I want to sell you this watch. First thing you're going to say is, how much do you want? My goal is going to say, no. How much are you willing to give me? Because I don't want to set the number. I come to you with a watch. You might look at that watch and say, ooh, that's a $1,500, $2,000 watch right there. That's a Rolex. That's $10,000, right? And in my head, I got this from my grandfather. I don't really care about watches. I don't know how much this goes for. If I could get $200, I'll be okay with it, right? That's the motto in business. So I'm going to say, hey, how much is this worth to you? You're going to say, well, obviously you're going to try to quote-unquote lowball me because you're going to think that, I know what I have. And you might say, okay, $2,000 watch, I'll give you $1,500. And in my brain, I'm like, I just wanted $200, right? So that's why in business, you never want to be the first person to throw out a number. You want someone else to throw out a number, and then you want to come back with whatever number you think is either appropriate. Whether you think their number is disrespectful, way too low, or your number, you want to come back and say, I want a lot more than that. So this is kind of the situation we're in. Both teams don't want to throw out a number first. Which, again, at the end of the day, I think Russell Wilson for a fifth or Jameis Winston for a fifth would probably be the most logical take to go with, right? When it comes to what you would give up for Russell or Jameis Winston. But again, you also got to keep in mind, the Bengals are not in a situation here where they can really negotiate too much. And what I mean by that is there's not many other options out there. And I think the Giants also know that as well. This is not a situation where a beggar can be a chooser here. If the Bengals want to go for a quarterback, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston are the top two options. Giants know that. But the Giants are also in a situation where it's like, hey, we just put in Jackson Dart, a rookie. He goes out there. He beats the Chargers. Awesome, right? He looks good. But then we also just lost Malik Neighbors for the year. And there's that dynamic of, okay, well, let's say moving forward, Jackson Dart had a first game where he looked amazing, but he starts to slow up and starts to go downhill. We need to put our backup in to potentially, pick the team back up. Now, obviously, they bench Russell Wilson, and in the end, you kind of go, back to the idea that you bench Russell Wilson, and now you're going to go with, what's his name? Jameis Winston, right? Because obviously Russell didn't work. You would probably put in Jameis Winston. But I think Giants also want to have that option. They want to have that extra quarterback option in case they need it. And you never know with injuries. You never know if Jackson Dart could get injured or something could happen, whatever. So I understand both parties here, both sides, because, like, again, one, you are working with a team who is kind of desperate, but you're also working with a team with the Bengals who are also very egotistical. And they never want to be seen as desperate. They never want to be seen as in a negative light. They never want to be seen as they have to make a trade. This is why they don't make trades. And the only time they do is when they get the B.J. Hill for Billy Price trade. Because they don't want to be seen as a team that is going out there and drastically trying to make a move that might be stupid. And I still think this is how my personal opinion is with the Russell Wilson situation. The reason why I think Zach Taylor is not trading away or trading for Russell Wilson or trading for Jameis Winston or trading for another quarterback, and he's only sticking with Jake Browning, even though I believe Zach Taylor doesn't think that Jake Browning is the best option, is because Jake Browning is the perfect scapegoat for Zach Taylor. He won't talk back. He won't talk bad about Taylor to the media. He will sit there, he'll be a good boy, and he'll do what Zach wants. And I think that's why Zach has not traded for another quarterback, because any other quarterback is a wild card. Russell Wilson might go to the media. Same thing with, Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is a very vocal player. So I think Jake Browning is such a perfect scapegoat that he can sit there and be like, oh, no, whatever. And it kind of just sits there with everyone twiddling their thumbs. While if you have someone else, they might actually talk, and that's going to make Zach Taylor look bad. And also, I feel like if, let's say, for example, Russell Wilson goes out there and does do amazing, right? I think that there's a situation where Zach also then looks really bad because it's like, okay, well, why didn't you make this move already? Why did you wait to make this move so far? So the best place to be is in the middle of, we're just not going to let it happen. And I also believe that Zach doesn't want us to succeed this year with Jake Browning. He wants us to fail with Jake Browning, and hear me out. And I know that's crazy to say, and I know that's an allegation to say, but it's because he wants to keep his job. If we're not successful this year with Jake Browning, then it's like, then there's that kind of pressure of, well, yeah, Zach Taylor sucks, but it's also, hey, Zach Taylor doesn't have a quarterback, right? Now, if Russell Wilson goes out there and he looks good and he's decent, but Zach Taylor clearly is still limiting Russell Wilson, then it's clear that Zach Taylor is the problem. And if we aren't successful, even though Russell Wilson is really good because of Zach Taylor, then all the heat goes towards Zach Taylor. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I feel about it. He's in his best spot is to stay put where he is, because then he won't be fired, incensed by the team, and he gets to kind of just twiddle his thumbs and stay in place. Where if he brings in Russell Wilson, it's going to show the downfall of how bad Zach Taylor is as a coach and as an offensive play caller. So, again, like I said, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like, and I would say, I don't want to say he wants the worst for us, like he wants us to lose. I guess I shouldn't say that. That's a bad thing to say. What I'll say is, I don't think, because again, at the end of the day, he wants to keep his job. He wants to stay as the coach. And I think he'd rather stay as the coach and us be not successful than us be successful and him lose his coaching job. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about it. But see you guys next one.